Hey fellow backyard warriors, Nick here. Welcome to part 2 of our Atlatl and dart build. We're going to be putting together our takedown dart. So the first thing you're going to need to get are two 1/2 inch dowels. These are each 36 inches long, so that's going to give us a 6-foot finished dart. Now 6 feet is good, it's a good length. It's kind of a nice balance between distance and accuracy. Generally, longer darts are going to be a little easier to throw with, they're going to be a little more accurate. Shorter darts usually go a little further. On the downside, longer darts also tend to be heavier, so they usually won't go as far. The flight is usually a little more exaggerated, but this is a really good trade-off, and it's a really nice size dart to practice with and get started with. So what we're going to need to do first is trim down the ends of this. So this is going to be the front, and I'm going to show you guys how to use a knife and a file just to taper this down so we can apply the point later. And then this I've already finished. This is going to be the end where the cup is going to go. We're going to be making a cup here at the end so that the Atlatl spur will lock into here. And we want to taper this so that it'll fit into the loading groove of our Atlatl, because the 1/2 inch diameter dowel is a little on the larger side. So a simple way to taper this tip, it's really simple. It's just like sharpening a pencil. You just kind of want to shave off the tip. And you want the end to be about 1/4 of an inch in diameter. So just keep going around in a circle until it's the right diameter, and then just even out the taper. I like to give myself a little bit long of a taper. That way there's a nice smooth transition to the point. Puts less strain on the point itself. So I'm just going to smooth this out by scraping. Now that I've got this, I'm just going to finish it off with the file. The file is just going to smooth it down to the finished taper. Alright, so there's that. I'm going to put this on the side for when we make our point. So now I've got the back end of the dart, and we're going to be using feather fletchings on this. But before I fletch it, I'm going to make my cup. Now you can use several things for the cup. You can take the tip of a knife and just gently start turning it in the exact center. And then as you do this, you want to drop the blade of the knife so that you get a nice cone shape. But something that's really easy to do is to take a drill bit. This is a 1/4 inch drill bit. Just place it in the center and then twist it. You don't want to hook this up to a drill. You don't want to use power for this, because it's really easy for this to slip. And you don't want to apply a lot of pressure either. Just lightly spin the drill bit in here. I'm applying a little pressure because I'm just trying to center this a little bit. But don't overdo it, because it's easy to have this end up in your hand if you're not careful. Alright, so there you go. You can see we have our little cup there. And I'm just going to file this end just to remove that edge. And there we go. So now I'm going to be applying my feathers, and I've got 8-inch long feathers. These are already cut and dyed. They're commercial feathers. If you guys are interested, I can show you how to process wild feathers as well. So I just kind of get an idea of where I want this, how far away from the end I want it. And today I'm going to be using fletching tape. I really like using fletching tape. It's really easy. If you can't get it, a little bit of super glue applied to the feather will do the same thing. You just need to hold it a little longer. And we're not going to be using a jig for this. I'm going to show you guys how I apply feathers by hand. Okay, so I've got my tape. Figure out about how far I want it from the end. And one thing to note is that when you're putting this first fletching on, you want to figure out where the grain is. You can see the grain lays down in this direction, like this. And that's the side I want to put this feather on, because it's going to be the side that flexes the most. So once I've got that, I just push it down a little ways. And one thing you want to do is every feather has a bottom and a top. This is the bottom. You can see from the front. You can see from here how the feather kind of comes out like this. And this is the top of the feather, this is the bottom. And you want to angle it in such a way that the bottom is what's catching the air. That way this will spin in flight. It'll also keep it more rigid. So once you've got your first feather down, you just go and repeat that. I'm going to do the rest and I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, I've gone ahead and finished fletching this dart. So now, you want to take a small pair of scissors and, starting from the back, just trim about 1/4 of an inch away from the end. Now, there are different ways to cut your feathers. You could cut them before you attach them. You could use a knife, you could use heat. I'm just going to be cutting them by hand with a pair of scissors. So I just want to follow up with that cut. So that way you can see I've left about 1/4 of an inch of quill there. That way we can wrap that down so it doesn't come off, just in case the tape or the glue fails. And now I'm just going to just kind of eyeball it. About 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch tall. And then just taper down to the front. Smooth it out. And then one more. There we go. So now you've got your one feather cut. Actually, it's a little off in the front. Let me fix that real quick. There we go. So now that you've got one feather cut, you just want to copy that on the other two. Alright, now that I've got the feathers cut, I'm using a little bit of electrical tape. If you wanted to, especially if you wanted to fit the theme of your atlatl, you could use artificial sinew or real sinew or some kind of thread to bind the ends here. And another thing you could do is you could also run thread through your fletchings, and it would either help reinforce your glue or you wouldn't even need to use glue. So I'm just going to wrap up the front edge of the feathers just to keep them from coming off. And then I want to tape up the back ends of the feathers to keep them from coming up. You also want to bind the very end where the cup is, just to strengthen it, keep it from splitting out. There it is. Our dart is fletched. Now it's time to make our point. So I'm going to be making a PEX pile. And this was developed by Justin Garnett of Basketmaker atlatl.com. And it's a really ingenious way to make a simple and durable point that also saves your dart if you hit something hard like a rock. So you need a flat nail or a cut nail. And this is an 1.5 inch nail. It makes about a 150 grain finished point. And then you're going to need a 1.5 inch length of 1/4 inch PEX pipe. So I'm going to heat this up with my heat gun. Now that it's nice and pliable, I'm going to take it and push it over the end of the nail. Now this may take a couple tries, but just push it in. You want it to go in about 1/4 inch, a little more than this. So I'm just going to heat this up a little more. Just push it in a little more. Okay. Here's our finished point. So to apply it to the front of our dart, I'm going to apply some hot melt glue on this first, and then I'm going to heat up the ferrule or the plastic portion of this. You want to heat the point and the hot melt, and when it's pliable, you just want to drive it on. Now be careful because this is really hot. So you want to wear gloves when working with this. Okay, so once you've got it on, just want to sight down and straighten the point. And there it is. Here's the finished point end of our Atlatl dart. Now you're going to take a 5-inch length of 1/2 inch CPVC pipe. Now this is smaller than regular PVC pipe because the inner diameter is 1/2 inch, unlike Schedule 40, which is a lot bigger than 1/2 inch. This makes the perfect sleeve for these 1-inch darts. So I'm going to heat this up and then drive this on halfway. And now that this is nice and pliable, you want to put this down about halfway. There we go. Alright, now that this is nice and pliable, just put both darts together. And as you're doing this, you just want to kind of twist the dart in your hands. You want to align it. Just make sure that the whole thing is straight. And what's nice about this is that you can really line up a dart, even if it's crooked or the individual dowels aren't lining up straight, you can kind of correct them with this center sleeve. And that's one of the reasons why I want this to be a butted connection, because I want these to be able to slide and move independently. That way you can do a lot of adjustment to the straightness of this dart after you've built it. Otherwise you'd be set with what you have, and with a connector like this, which is flexible, you want to really use that to your advantage. So there it is. The dart is finished and ready to throw. And you can take it apart for storage or transport. one thing you want to do is take some sandpaper and lightly sand this down, because as this cools, it's going to be a harder fit. It's going to be harder to get this in there. Just loosen it up a little bit. You want this to be nice and snug, but you should be able to take it apart fairly easily, a little easier than that. But you don't want it to be super loose that this is just going to fall out all the time. And if that ever happens, you can always heat this up and squish it down onto the connector. So here it is. Thanks for watching, and let's go throw this.